Hello everyone, and welcome to my breakdown video for the latest Final Fantasy XVI trailer. We're not going to waste any time, we're jumping into this one right now. So we start with a shot of a blonde-haired woman. Thanks to additional information on the Final Fantasy XVI website, we now know that she is the Warden of the Wind, Benedicta Harmon, dominant of the icon Garuda, and basically a sort of spy master for the Kingdom of Wallode, I apologize if I'm messing up these names, who is looking for the hidden second icon of fire and has some sort of relationship with the dominant of Titan, whom you see standing behind her in the first trailer. More on him later. When we last saw Benedicta, she was smoking a pipe and looking quite confident. Here, however, she looks angry and possibly desperate as she transforms into Garuda. And it's interesting to note that while we see her transforming into Garuda, a voice ominously tells us the power of an icon gradually wears away at one's being. It breaks and unmakes the dominant so that it might reveal its immaculate aspect. That is super interesting to note because not only does it possibly explain Benedicta's anguish here, but as we'll see, the main protagonist Clive can wield the power of multiple icons, which begs the question, what does that do to his mind and body? After that, we see quick images of Ifrit and what I assume to be Bahamut, and then you see Titan messing up the battlefield, and if you look closely, he's also upheaving an ice shard, alluding to the battle between Titan and Shiva we've already seen in the previous trailer. After this, we see Jill fretting to Clive under a full moon and a tiny red dot moon that there's going to be another war. That full moon, by the way, is seen again later in a shot with Ifrit. We then see the Archduke of Rosaria, I think that's him, claiming that every day they delay is a disaster. After that, you see Clive fighting an Imperial Lancer. Is that a soldier from the invading empire mentioned in the first trailer? While in the upper left-hand corner, you see an image of the Phoenix icon and I think Garuda. You then see the Archduke on his chocobo leading an army. Fun fact, that's Joshua behind him and to the left, but Clive is nowhere to be found in this shot, so maybe he was deliberately left behind so that the sweet naive Joshua can prove himself as the dominant of Phoenix. So where is his big bro? Well, as it turns out, Clive is not sitting idly on the sidelines. Here you see him taking on a level 13 Royal Sigfreyr, and later a number of Royal Folk stuff, using the power of the Phoenix and also using a dodge, lunge, and counter ability and getting bonus damage for doing so, as well as something called Burst Shot, something called I think Will Break, and Iconic Strike. And you can see that in the lower right hand corner, the UI features attacks and spells that are assigned specific buttons. It's not clear yet if you can rearrange the way these are mapped out via settings, but it's possible. Even more interesting is the button called Phoenix Shift, which I assume allows you to shift between icons that Clive carries inside him. You also see Clive deploying Phoenix fire-related abilities like Rising Flame and Scarlet Cyclone, which is cool. Now, is there any significance about the type of enemy Clive is fighting? Maybe. Notice he's fighting enemies like Royal Sigfreyr and Folkstaff, and I zero in on that because that sounds like something out of Norse lore, and as we'll see later, Clive can summon Odin, who, if their flag is anything to go by, is the icon of the Kingdom of Wallode. Does that mean Warlord teams up with the Empire, I assume the Holy Empire of Sombrek, and fights Rosaria early on in the game? Perhaps. Then again, these names could just be generic, and I apologize, I keep trying to butcher these names, I'm so sorry. At any rate, to continue, you can also see in the lower left-hand corner icons for potions and tonics, which are mapped out to the D-pad. And way in the upper left-hand corner above the health bar is another series of images you can faintly see, which clearly are acting as a shortcut to items, at least I think they are. It's hard to see what these are, but you can clearly see a beast icon on the far right corner that says perks and a sword on the far left, which I assume means something about weapons. Moving on, in the next scene you see someone with a lance marching towards a ruler on a throne. By the way, who's the brat lounging next to him on the right? While this occurs, someone laments that, quote, the chaos he would wreak would sweep all of Valestia into the abyss. I can only assume he is in fact Clive. I suspect that his ability to wield the power of multiple icons means people are afraid of him and want him to go away. But that is not nearly the most interesting thing happening here. There are two other things that immediately caught my attention. The first is that I think we're in the Holy Empire of Sombrek here. Part of the reason is that the description for the empire sounds very European to me, and the images in the scene look very European. In fact, the imagery here very much reminds me of Ishgard in Final Fantasy XIV, a religious city-state with a French motif, and I see a lot of the same iconography here, from the chair the ruler is sitting on, to the clothes, to the tapestry in the background, to a dude wielding a lance, the chosen weapon of the dragoons of Ishgard. Yo, what's up, Estinian? But even more interesting than that is when we briefly see a blonde-haired, angry young man. Now, this could be the kid lounging around from earlier, but what if this angry young man we see is in fact a grown-up Joshua? Considering how much this game seems to draw from the constant family feuding and complex politics of Ivalice, it's possible Joshua has survived the trauma he endured in the first trailer and is now working with the Empire in order to stop Clive from doing whatever it is that he's doing. That would explain the logo of Ifrit versus Phoenix, since Clive can summon multiple icons and one of them is probably Ifrit. It's not clear yet. Man, this is complex. Also, shout out to eagle-eyed fans for drawing parallels between this Joshua and the one from Vagrant Story. That is why I assume there is going to be some family drama here. Meanwhile, we see another gameplay clip of Clive wrecking enemies, this time with the power of Garuda. If you look in the right-hand corner, you can see abilities like Gouge, Wicked Wheel, and Deadly Embrace, and immediately after that, Clive shifts to Titan, where he gains the power of Earth abilities like Upheaval, Wind Up, and Titanic Block. He also seems to get bonus damage for smoothly shifting from one icon to another, or perhaps for chaining together certain elemental spells, I'm not quite sure. Also, as you can see in the upper left-hand corner, all the icons that Clive can switch between are accessible via the L2 button, which is very convenient. In this case, Titan, Garuda, and what looks like Ramuh are available. We then see Clive staggering his opponent and using Odin's dark abilities, which includes Arm of Darkness, Heaven's Cloud, and Gungnir. Shout out to eagle-eyed fans like Ginger JRPG Gaming for noticing each of these abilities has a circular meter that either represents a timed cooldown or needs to be filled via regular attacks before they can be used again. Another more mysterious meter that you can see is this giant circle that fills up whenever you attack. Is this an overdrive meter? Maybe, but then what are the orange meters below the green health meter in the upper right-hand corner? A lot of meters going on. After that, you see a naked dude telling a naked lady, is that Garuda's dominant? That he will unite the dominants and put an end to the strife? Good luck, dude. After that, you see the lovely Shiva being employed by Clive with her Thunderstorm, Pile Drive, and Cold Snap abilities, plus you see Diamond Dust ×2. By the way, as I look at this trailer, I notice that Clive can only equip 3 dominants at a time, but maybe that changes later in the story. Next, we see a battlefield, and I assume this big dude here is Hugo Kupka, the dominant for Titan and economic advisor to the Dalmakian Republic. It makes sense, since he's huge, and looks like he's sitting a member of parliament or a representative of his country down hard. This is the same scene we saw Jill smoking in earlier. In his official description, it says this once humble foot soldier wields a lot of political and military influence, although interesting to note, apparently he has much to learn from Benedicta. But what's weird is Hugo says, our duel will shake the island to its foundations, and we then see him taking on Clive, possibly while transforming into Titan or being consumed by him. Remember, the very being of a dominant is worn away so that the icon can manifest its true power. The issue is that the Dalmakian Republic is not an island, so either this duel takes place in the Iron Kingdom, which is an island, or the Dalmakian Republic teams up with the Iron Kingdom to take down Rosaria, or maybe more specifically, Clive. It could also be that the island of the Iron Kingdom decided to hire out the dominant of Titan, considering this island does not have any dominant, as they consider dominants to be abominations. Which of these possibilities is it? Well, we'll have to wait and see when the game releases summer 2023. And finally, we are treated to epic icon fights. Shiva versus Titan, Bahamut versus Odin, Ifrit versus Phoenix, Ifrit versus Titan, Ramuh kicking butt, Shiva versus Clive, you can tell because of the 3 icons in the upper left-hand corner, Ifrit versus Garuda, Bahamut trying to serve Odin some Mega Flare, I think? What looks like soldiers caught in the middle of the fight, yikes. Shiva serving some ice, Hellfire raining down on people, more Mega Flare, citizens caught in more fighting, the Emperor claiming every home burnt can be rebuilt, and then saying the Empire will live on. I don't know if that means the Empire just got attacked or is about to attack. We then see the icons and their dominants confirming what we already knew. Phoenix dominant is Joshua, Titans is Hugo, Benedicta is Garuda's dominant, Ramuh is Sid from Final Fantasy XIV. Shiva is totally represented by Jill, the art for the game gives it away, Odin and Bahamut are still a mystery, and I'm certain the dominant for Ifrit is either Clive or whoever wields Ifrit and attacked Joshua's Phoenix in the first trailer. By the way, it's interesting to note that Ifrit is called a dark icon, which makes me wonder if there are dark versions of Shiva, Phoenix, and other icons as well, and maybe the man transforming into Ifrit represents Dark Ifrit and maybe Clive Light Ifrit? Woo! And there you have it, a jam-packed trailer for Final Fantasy XVI. Okay, that was a lot to process, and I know I missed something, so if you spotted something in the trailer I didn't, or have your own theories, please leave a comment in the comment section below, and for all things Final Fantasy, please like and subscribe to this channel. Thanks so much for watching, guys. See you later.